sponsor an event that the president of the College Democrats and the president of Turning Point USA would both come to. And we are honored to have both of those individuals, Bucknell undergraduates, here with us tonight, along with a whole host of other dignitaries who are too numerous to name, but I do want to express my gratitude briefly and particularly to two of them. We are privileged to have the mayor of Williamsport, Pennsylvania, Mayor Slaughter, and Bucknell President Emeritus Gary Soyka with us tonight, along with our real customers, Bucknell University undergraduate. It gives me great joy as an alum who spent a lot of time, not just in Lewisburg, but in Kramer and Selinsgrove and Bloomsburg and other towns when I was here, that these gatherings bring members of the community and Bucknell students together. I have to say a more serious word about who and what we're about tonight before introducing our moderator. If you wonder why 5 years ago did a bunch of Bucknell University alumni, yours truly being one of them, the gentleman who funded this building being another, start an independent nonprofit to sponsor events like this. If it isn't enough for you that we would bring together disparate student organizations, I'll give you two statistics. Recently, a national organization that focuses on freedom of speech based in Philadelphia, which is heaven in case you don't know, because that's where I'm from, found that 53% of students nationally had self-censored on issues like those we're going to discuss tonight. The majority of college students in America. And, most chillingly, 1 out of 3 college students in America believe that it is okay, in some way, shape, or form, to use violence to stop a speaker with whom you disagree. Ladies and gentlemen, as I was rereading those statistics, which I've read before standing at this podium, they struck me in a new way because this is the first time I've stood at a podium at my alma mater since the most recent instance of political violence in this country. And I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. I'm sure you know that that political violence has also affected our governor and many others. So I want to say a quick word to today's Bucknellians. If you're one of those 1 in 3 students, I hope that after tonight you will see why you're wrong. This is one of the rooms where it's okay to say the other person's wrong, civilly, respectfully, like I just did. It is never okay to use violence to stop words. So with that, let's have our program tonight. Choked up on there. When our program tonight came together, I must confess, it was before any of the events that I referenced, I must confess I had a moment of, okay, if there's one topic on which people tend to self-censor on either side, it is the current President of the United States of America. Whatever your perspective is, I think we can agree on that. That is exactly the reason why this organization exists, is to create a room like this where we can take a topic that most people avoid or yell about and talk about it civilly, openly, as part of the search for truth. And so that's what we're going to do tonight with respect to President Trump and his agenda and his actions and everything that he's doing. If you're here for the first time, you're going to find it addictive, just like I did. That's why I drive an hour and a half from my house to be here. And if I'm right about that, you'll see flyers on your tables as to some of our upcoming programs. We have 2 coming up very shortly, not on the same issues, but with the same ethos. Big ideas coming together civilly and disagreeing. And in a very short minute, I'm going to introduce our speakers tonight. Both of them happen to be friends of mine, and I'm very gratified that they drove all the way from heaven, I mean Philadelphia, and also that they gave me my first excuse to wear my Pennsylvania tie, because both of them serve in the Pennsylvania General Assembly. But before that, I want to introduce our moderator, who is seated right here. That is Garrett Van Larkham de Luis. He is a senior international relations major here at Bucknell. He is a Chi Phi I was a GDI, just so you know, bud. He is a member of the Alpha Lambda Delta Honor Society, and he's also a student of Professor John Doses of the Department of Political Science, who is one of the many faculty members the Open Discourse Coalition has had the privilege of supporting. Garrett's going to do a great job, and if you're asking, is that a statement that we're going to have a student moderate this discussion? Yes, it is. That is exactly what college students should be doing, instead of what that survey said. And that's what we stand for, and that's what we are encouraging here at Bucknell and at other places. Joining me in a second right here at this podium is our first speaker and member of this debate. His name is Jared Solomon. He is a state representative from Northeast Philadelphia. He is a repeat ODC speaker and served as a fellow also at our organization, creating opportunities for students who wanted to explore life in public policy. Among his other distinctives, Representative Solomon is the chair of the Veterans Affairs and Emergency Preparedness Committee. He is a JAG, he's a dad, he's a husband, and for those of us who are Bucknellians, we also have to include the fact that he didn't go to Bucknell, he went to Swarthmore, and no one, there it is. And to another school where we've begun to sponsor programs, the Charles Widger School of Law at Villanova University. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Representative Jared Solomon. And lastly, taking this podium is our other speaker, Representative Martina White. Representative White is from Northeast, also from Northeast Philadelphia. She is the chair of the Republican caucus. Maybe it goes without saying, but I suppose I should have said that our two speakers come from opposite sides of the political aisle. Representative Solomon is a Democrat, ran for statewide office. Representative White chairs the Republican caucus in the House of Representatives. She is also not a Bucknellian, but has a very interesting distinctive that I happen to think is really cool. She is the first member of her immediate family to go to college. She graduated from Elizabethtown, and prior to joining the Pennsylvania General Assembly, quite unexpectedly, which you should ask her about in the Q&A, being, as I recall, the first member of her party to be elected in that city in 25 years. Representative White was a financial advisor. Please welcome Representative Martina White.
Thank you, Charles. So with that, we will begin our dialogue tonight, and we will be covering 3 key themes over the next hour, followed then by an audience Q&A. These themes are domestic policy, higher education, and free speech. Unlike televised debates, we want our guests to have more space than short sound bites allow, and for deep and nuanced topics. And we want there to be space for the other guests to respond. However, I may interject if there's too much time taken on one topic or by one speaker. So, to begin with domestic policy, President Trump's tariffs were intended to protect American industries and address trade imbalances, but they also have led to higher costs for some consumers and businesses. How effective do you think President Trump's tariffs were in achieving their stated goals, and what impact did it have on Pennsylvanians? Representative White, start with you.
Well, thank you for the question. So first and foremost, I do really want to thank your organization for hosting this tonight. It is really, really important that the community be able to come together with students and that we be able to have this kind of dialogue. So thank you again. As for the president's tariff and domestic policies, I will say that I think thus far we have seen tremendous success. The trade deficit is being addressed. We are seeing progress being made on all different fronts. I think it kind of happened all in a very short window of time, and that is why we're seeing some of the business community trying to adapt quickly, and that can be sometimes difficult. So some of the local businesses from my area have talked about, yes, they're able to onshore more jobs back to the United States, which is fantastic. That's what we want to see. But they've also had some difficulties in areas where it's a very unique, difficult process or a type of product that they utilize in their manufacturing process that otherwise they can't bring back to the United States because it's very unique to the principle that's designed it elsewhere. So, that can be challenging for sure, but I think overall, the economy is doing very well. Believe it or not, GDP growth is more than what economists expect, right? They usually target around 3%, but we're exceeding that at like 3.8%. And, I think these are important indicators that reflect positively on what the president has done thus far, but there's obviously a lot more that goes along with that. I don't know if you'd like me to expand upon it or...
So I think we'll have Representative Sullivan answer first, and then we can expand after.
Sounds good.
All right. Yep.
Thank you so much. Thank you for moderating. Thank you, Charles. Gavin, thank you for getting me. I was roaming the Bucknell campus until Gavin rescued me, so thank you. It is telling that if you want to have a debate that embraces good dialogue and discourse and civic engagement, you need not one, but two representatives from Northeast Philadelphia. Two. You guys know there are other counties in this great Commonwealth, but we came right to where it's at in Northeast Philadelphia. I completely disagree with my friend, Martina White. The tariffs have been abysmal, and you all know it because it's hitting your pocketbook, your day-to-day life, your groceries, your appliances, your electronics. There is a direct line between the tariffs of 1920, the Smoot-Hawley tariffs, and the tariffs of 2025. And the line that goes through both of those eras is a line that it wholeheartedly embraces corruption. Now, I strongly am against corruption. I've called out my own party. I'm a reformer. I do it because when politicians are self-dealing, when they are in politics for threats, intimidation, and to pad their own pocket, we all get hurt, and they gain. The Smoot-Hawley tariffs was about trying to prop up initially the agricultural industry. And initially, when those tariffs were attempted, other congressmen and congresswomen said, let's get in on this action. And that one tariff became hundreds of tariffs as each individual congressperson began to get their slice of the pie, not about you, but about a corrupt bargain that seek to prop up industries. That is what is happening right now. This is not an attempt to restore the manufacturing industry. In fact, it is not. Manufacturing is at an all-time low. Construction is at an all-time low. What this is about is enriching one guy, and that is President Trump. And just one example here. He goes to Vietnam, and he is offered the ability to build a property and to do a deal in Vietnam. Guess what happened overnight? Tariff all of a sudden went down. There is actually a way to do this. If you really are interested and dedicated to manufacturing, you ramp up this tariff. You make predictability in the tariff regime. And you do it narrowly focused to those industries that are really in need. For instance, drones, iPhones, industries that touch upon national security. You are narrowly tailored in your approach. This is not about industries. This is not about our economy. It's about propping up Donald Trump.
Thank you. So I guess as a follow-up on both of your comments, so we've mentioned that from both sides of the aisle that there may be a position that tariffs can play for the benefit of this country. That being said, do we see that the effects of the Trump presidency's tariffs have made either party essentially pick a side on whether pro or con on tariffs? Or is there a coming together on where more effective implementation of tariffs can be reached? Or is it simply a yes or no in terms of these two parties?
Well, go ahead.
Go ahead.
As I said, I mean, I didn't think really anyone believed in tariffs anymore. I don't know how many of you are Republican, but the Republican Party has completely abandoned until President Trump, tariffs, except in these specific cases of issues that are focused on particular industries. For instance, solar, where you're trying to gain a competitive edge, for instance, over China. By the way, one of the reasons that presidents have retreated from tariffs is because tariffs are the exclusive authority beyond certain delineated powers of Congress. And ladies and gentlemen, Article 1 in this administration has been completely abandoned. Imagine you are a congressman or a U.S. senator. You have spent your whole life going to events like this, but usually with really bad food. And you are traveling a particular state. You're building your political brand. You have reached the pinnacle of political power. You now are a United States Senator. If you are a Senate Republican, you have made it your brand to believe in free market policy. Neutral, broad-based policy that allows for businesses to have a sense of predictability. That's what Republicans say all the time.
So
What happened to that? I will tell you, President Trump has completely taken over Congress. And it's all about politics. It's not about policy.
Well, I will just make a few points here, one of which is the big, beautiful bill, right? Everybody's heard of it. It's been one of the most instrumental tools that the American people have had in decades that has facilitated the individual citizens of this country to receive about $13,000 in tax benefits, okay? They are saving money, whether, my colleague here would like to believe it or not. The problem is, when we talk about predictability, and hold on one second. By the way, U.S. Senator Fetterman voted with the Republicans. So Pennsylvania, okay, Pennsylvania's U.S. senators have voted in favor of what the president and what Congress has put forward in terms of opening up this government. So it can be done. It can be done in a bipartisan way. But unfortunately, here in Pennsylvania, we have a very, very difficult time when it comes to predictability. When you talk about manufacturing and the cost of goods being more expensive today than they were yesterday, yeah, you know what? It is really, really difficult when you have policies that are being implemented here at the state level in terms of energy policy. This is something that our federal government is unleashing, okay? They've actually, you've probably seen it at the gas pump, right? Gas prices are now lower than they were under the Biden administration. But unfortunately, when you have manufacturers who rely heavily on electricity, right, to produce the goods that you all and all of us consume, there are very important policy items that need to be addressed when it comes to energy here in Pennsylvania, such as the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, which is something that our the Commonwealth Court declared to be an unconstitutional tax, an energy tax on all of us. And unfortunately, our Governor Shapiro continues to create unpredictability in the marketplace when it comes to energy. by pursuing that appeal in the courts to the Supreme Court so that that Reggie policy, that unconstitutional tax, will continue to be put into effect. Why is he advocating for something like that? We need real change. We need to have predictability. Manufacturers need the predictability in the marketplace through regulatory reforms. We need to make sure that in terms of again, when it comes to manufacturing and energy policy, there are just way too many things that he is doing that is causing us to see industry not interested in investing here in Pennsylvania. McCormick and the president had to beg and plead with industry to please come to Pennsylvania. You saw them out in Pittsburgh saying, you know, there's potentially $94 billion worth of investment that can happen here in this Commonwealth if we would just unleash Pennsylvania's energy sector. But that's just not happening. We're holding ourselves back with the leadership that we have here. And, you know, when you want to talk about corruption, my goodness, Jared, it's, you know, USAID, anybody ever heard of that? Where they funneled money back into the states through NGOs and all kinds of Democrat initiatives, registering voters when they shouldn't have been, you know, doing illegal activities. And now those things are being brought to light through this administration, fighting back and making sure that the American people's taxpayer dollars that you worked so hard for, that they're used properly, that they're not just wasted or fraudulently taken from the people who need it the most.
Martina knows that there's never been an energy governor like Josh Shapiro. It's been unleashed. There's no more unleashing. Every one of my Republican colleagues who I talk to, all they talk about is unleashing. Unleashing what? Almost every single week, our governor is announcing a new data center, new energy development. Homer City is creating jobs like we've never seen across our Commonwealth. And by the way, if he's not doing all of this development, how come his approval rating is 60%? How come in nearly every poll since he was elected, 1 out of 4 Republicans support Josh Shapiro's policies? It is unheard of in modern history in Pennsylvania at this point in governor's tenure to be at 60%. Unheard of. The big beautiful bill. My big beautiful topic.
I was going to say, I could rebut that easily.
Well, I think there's one other pivotal aspect of the domestic policy we wanted to shift to, considering our time, but I did appreciate kind of evoking the more nuanced shifting party approaches to tariffs, especially as it pertains to the welfare of Pennsylvanians, so thank you. But now to go to the other topic in domestic policy, immigration. So immigration affects both Pennsylvania's economy and communities, from labor markets to public services, from Philadelphia to here in Lewisburg. Do President Trump's policies help or hurt the state's ability to balance border security, legal pathways for immigrants, and the support for residents impacted by this immigration? Representative White, we'll start with you.
So we are from Philadelphia, as you know. We have Kensington, which is the drug delivery system practically of America, unfortunately. We are at the epicenter of addiction and all that comes along with it. And sadly, our communities have suffered because of our borders being open for so long, and unnecessarily. This president closed it off. He said no more. No more drug trafficking, no more human trafficking, no more attacking the American people in these ways is acceptable. It is not acceptable anymore. And he just closed it down. No other president has done that. None. Nobody thought it could be done. As for the impacts here in Pennsylvania, across the country, in terms of immigration and the removal of illegal immigrants. I think that what is most important is the fact that that this administration has been able to get over 600 terrorists out of our communities. One of which, by the way, was in Northeast Philadelphia. ICE arrested an individual who was a potential terrorist threat from Al-Qaeda. Just this year. These are the types of things that I get very upset about when I know that people want to, attack the immigration issue in ways that is not appropriate, because literally lives are being saved by making sure that people who want to harm Americans are taken off of our streets and sent either to prison or not here in America. And I would also just say that in terms of, jobs, my colleagues always talk about, we need to raise wages, we need to raise the minimum wage. For decades, they have allowed illegal immigrants to flood into America and undermine wages, Americans' wages. That is why I think that this issue is really important and why it's been well addressed by the administration.
There's no question that President Biden needed to do a better job with the border. No question about it at all. It is the way, the contours of President Trump's approach to immigration policy. I think that in the United States, at least for me, I think most in this room, our due north always has to be the rule of law. Always. This president has no concern at all for the rule of law. He cares about his politics. He cares about improving and enriching himself, but not about our most sacred value, which is the rule of law. Now, if you're a Republican in this audience, just think about this for a moment. You're seeing the images of many innocent U.S. citizens being removed from big cities, most recently in Chicago. Imagine if the president was Barack Obama, and Barack Obama had sent the Illinois Guard to Mississippi to remove illegals. I don't think Republicans would tolerate that for a second. There would be pitchforks all over Washington, D.C. But this Republican Party has lost its way. And it's lost what is the guiding principle in our society, which is always to abide by the rule of law. We are in uncharted territory. I did this. I keep leading into the mic. I'm going to be better. We are in uncharted territory in this administration. The legal authority that President Trump is citing is the Alien Enemies Act, passed in 1798 and used 3 times during the war by John Adams of 1812, World War I and World War II. Now, what's different about those times than now? There was actually a war, a real full-blown war. And you know what? During World War II, due process rights were observed and protected. W administration, enemy combatants, Supreme Court came in and said, you can contest your right to be designated as an enemy combatant. You do have due process rights. President Trump has very clearly decided that, just to the argument before, it's not just that he wants to be Congress, he wants to be the courts. So the unique black hole, legal black hole around this, is that we're going to deport people to foreign countries where we don't have any sovereignty. So when the El Salvadorian president sits in the White House and says, God, I just won't be able to do anything about sending anyone back home. And by the way, President Trump continues, maybe we need to think about U.S. citizens next. These are our friends, our neighbors, and our loved ones. It's downright un-American, and Republicans know this, but they are being taken over by a corrupt bargain that they've made with President Trump.
Thank you. There's a lot to unpack there, so I think we might be revisiting that with the time it deserves with the Q&A. But that being said, we'll be switching to our second topic, which is higher education. So, Americans' trust in higher education recently ticked up after hitting an all-time low in 2023 to 2024. The decline in trust was seen in both Democrats and Republicans. Recently, the Trump administration proposed the Compact for Academic Excellence in Higher Education to 9 U.S. universities, including the University of Pennsylvania. There are rumors that this program will offer federal funding in exchange for universities agreeing to several key policy changes, such as capping international undergraduate students, freezing tuition for 5 years, and prohibiting the consideration of race, gender, and political views in admissions and hiring decisions. The state legislature already has a role in budgeting, appropriations, and policies for public universities. Given the state of higher education and the role of the state legislature, are the actions of the Trump administration helpful or harmful, and why? Representative Solomon, we'll start with you this time.
Remember when President Trump got elected and he sat in the Oval Office for countless hours signing executive orders, right? One of those executive orders, he pledged to stop all government censorship and bring back free speech. Well, what exactly happened to that? $400 million was canceled to Columbia, a lot of that going to cancer research. And we are punishing universities, law firms, not because we have a fundamental desire to restructure policy, but because we disagree with their politics. The one thing in this space that Donald Trump said that really makes sense, he said, we're giving all this money to Harvard and Columbia. Why don't we roll that all up and just make a vast investment in vocational schools across the country? Now that's a policy to spark a new interest in the next generation of students that gives them a local career pathway to hone and develop, to raise a family. What happened to that? Because the constant pivot towards the bold, the just complete raw political calculation is all we ever get from this administration.
You're so good, Jared. You know he's an attorney, right? All right. That was not a pop shot. That was a kudos to you. I haven't gotten that far in my career yet. Okay. So, couple of things. Government incentivizes the behaviors it wants to see. The president is in charge of a few things, including foreign affairs and executive orders and our military and some other things, obviously. But when it comes to these policies on trying to incentivize universities to behave in really what I would say is be more American. Open up dialogue like we're doing here today. Have conversations about the things that people maybe get a little uncomfortable about, like making sure that women in sports is being brought up on these college campuses, that they're protecting women. We talk about the rule of law. Title IX protects women. from having to compete against their male counterparts. It's patently unfair, and the president is trying to make sure that it doesn't continue to happen. When we talk about achievements, right? He's replacing DEI with merit. Do each of you work hard at school? I bet you do. Is it fair when others are getting more credit for the work you do? No. Is it fair, these types of policies? No, patently no, they're not. And so merit is being brought back into these institutions through the administration trying to incentivize it and saying, you know what, yeah, we're not going to keep paying for these universities who, by the way, have bajillions of dollars sitting in funds that they could easily pay for every single student to go to school for free if they wanted, but they choose not to. They charge students anyway. You want to talk about free speech? Philadelphia is a prime example when it comes to universities. Look at University of Pennsylvania. It's been obviously the women's sports issue, but then you look at anti-Semitism on campus. Harassment is not free speech. Verbally attacking people for their religious beliefs is not free speech. It's wrong. And I will just say that, in Philadelphia in particular, there aren't a lot of voices that are the voice of opposition. You're looking at her, pretty much. So when you are standing up for what you believe in and you are being brave enough to take a stand on these critical issues because you know that our founding fathers wanted us to embrace free speech. They wanted us to be able to communicate with one another and have dialogue about any issue without having to worry that we will be attacked for it physically. And so, earlier we heard about, political violence. It is wrong. It's unacceptable. And I think that, these types of government incentives that we're talking about through these compacts are just a reflection of the core beliefs that Americans, I think, are trying to get at.
I think that, you want to go? I think Martina summed up where the Republican Party is. It's a grievance type politics. And by the way, my party has these issues too. Parties have become about, you're getting this, I'm upset, and I want action. That is not what appeals to a real civic virtue that uplifts American values. By the way, why is diversity so maligned? Diversity does not just mean people who are Muslim and black and Hispanic. Diversity includes people who live in rural Pennsylvania. Diversity includes my district and Martina's district, the two most diverse communities in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. What is wrong with understanding the unique Pennsylvania and American experience of people from all 67 counties? My grandparents, great-grandparents, escaped religious persecution in the Ukraine. They escaped during the pogroms. And they came to Northeast Philly with nothing. They started a family. At the time, they were two of the few Jewish folks in Northeast Philly. It was hard. They built a business. Their community eventually learned to embrace them. What's wrong with celebrating their story? Those stories dot every single nook and cranny of our beautiful Commonwealth. Our president is trying to deny us the ability to celebrate those stories because he is fueled by an anger and grievance that pervades everything he does. This is not a politics meant for long-term gain. Populism may work in an election or two, but we need to get to back to a politics that embraces all Americans. That's what we all need to do.
Would you like to respond?
I
please?
would,
Yes.
because we, myself, Republicans, I'm confident the president as well, absolutely celebrate diversity. Absolutely. It's the American way. The guy's from New York, like the melting pot of America, and has worked with all different people to achieve incredible things, including peace abroad. Israel, Iran, and the nuclear abolishment. I mean, this guy and the Republican Party absolutely embraces diversity. What is not okay is to pick and choose based on it's basically discrimination is what it comes down to. You know, you can't do things like that. You have to really evaluate people for what they're bringing to the table, okay? In terms of their knowledge, again, going back to merit and achievements. It's the fair way to approach things. If I think my colleagues, they always talk about, you know, we don't see color. We don't see color. I don't either. I really don't. I want to make sure that we have the best and the brightest in the positions that they're supposed to be in. And I think they should be paid what their value is worth, what they bring to the table. And I think that's what we're trying to get back to. I would also, you know, next year we celebrate USA 250, right? You're one of the chairmen of the groups that helps to coordinate that. And I'll be honest, I think if Biden was in charge, I don't even know if there'd be an American flag flying. That's how ashamed and embarrassed the Democrats have become of America and revolt against the very democracy. You know, they go out and they protest the No Kings stuff, and it's like, there was an election. It happened, believe it or not. You know, I really encourage everyone to you know, consider those points in this conversation as well, okay? Thank you.
Elections definitely have consequences. Martina's right about that. But I would ask everyone here, do you think that we're in a decent moment, a decent age in our country, in our politics? Is this the best we can do for our national and moral character? Does anyone really believe that this is the best that we are as Americans? Trump always has the wrong answer to the right question every single time. He is right to talk about communities that have been left behind. And he taps into an energy and fears and anxieties like few politicians do. But his answer is to fuel his politics and motivate his politics by an intense cruelty. You have seen all of the tweets and videos and his staffers almost laughing with glee as people are removed from this country. Now, wherever you are on that issue, maybe some in this room feel that it is in fact decent and moral to remove U.S. citizens from this country without due process. I would tend to disagree, but you can submit that that's your position to make our country safer and more secure. But is that decent? Is that honorable? You hear the president and Stephen Miller talk with complete derision about the immigrant experience. Yet everyone in this room comes from a family of immigrants who have come to this country and made their own way. We all know we need to get America out of this cruel cycle and return our country to the honor that it deserves.
Thank you. I appreciate the sentiments both of you had regarding free speech and the expression of Americans about this presidency, whether it be from Republicans or Democrats. So I'd like to touch on that with our next segment, specifically on free speech. So President Trump has said he's very strong on free speech and will always defend free speech. However, we've seen more recently that free speech proponents have criticized the president from claims that he has been trying to control what has been taught in classrooms to what people have been saying on television. How would you grade President Trump's record on free speech, and where can lawmakers help improve free speech for Americans? Representative White, sure, please.
All I can say is free speech, it's the most important thing we have here in America, to be able to speak freely and not be attacked for it, right? I think that we went from a president who avoided almost entirely any kind of press interaction to the best of his ability, to now a president who is very transparent, answers basically all the questions you could possibly ask in the press room. So, I think that is part of it. Protecting free speech is also embracing it in a way that hasn't been done before. Never before really has there been interactions through social media from presidential candidates or even the president himself now in the way that he has done, whether it be the tweets and the updates, and it's just a constant communication feed of information that helps to inform the public of the actions that he's taking. And we talked about it a little bit about on college campuses and ensuring that they're embracing free speech and allowing alternative viewpoints to be heard. The actions of the president are really such that he's trying to encourage it. So, I think overall it's being done well, and I think we need to continue to move in that direction of transparency and embracing and upholding free speech.
Our launching point in this discussion should be where President Trump and Vice President Vance began, and MAGA began, and Republicans began, which is there were three main wrong turns that my party made during the Biden administration. COVID misinformation, the far-right publishers who were shut out on the internet, and Hunter Biden's laptop. Those three were constant, an echo chamber from the president and the vice president. And I think that my party has to have a reckoning with some of the actions we took during the Biden administration. But what turn did the Trump administration then take? Everyone saw the FCC chairman threaten Jimmy Kimmel. What happened to free speech there? In fact, it didn't just end with Kimmel. Trump said we should investigate and possibly pull the license of any network and any individual that doesn't agree with me. It's pretty broad sweeping, don't you say? Where is free speech in that? Pam Bondi, U.S. Attorney, remarkably said, and then eventually walked back, that hate speech, speech basically she doesn't like, and which then President Trump agreed, is not protected by the First Amendment. J.D. Vance has gone further to encourage a look at folks on the left who disagree with Trump's policies. How does this make you all feel about our country? Does this not have a chilling effect on our ability to organize, to speak openly about issues? We're at one of the centers of civic discourse here at Bucknell. Now, I'm not sure how you all felt during the moment in time when a lot of college campuses had protests and encampments. Some schools got it completely wrong. Some, like hopefully Bucknell, Vanderbilt, Michigan, got it right, which is we want our students to express themselves in an open, honest, clear, concise, crisp way that encourages dialogue. That is not what our president believes at all. He wants to create an environment that shuts out all political discourse that he does not embrace. That is not what the Republican Party used to stand for.
Thank you. So what I can parse from this conversation is that there seems to be a sentiment of this cycle of reciprocity, and that certain actions taken against free speech have started with the other party, but obviously both parties, and as you have stated, prioritize this as a fundamental American right. So what steps can both parties take starting today that bring both sides together, whether that be discursively or through policy? So we'll start with you, Representative.
How about you just talk about, since we're on a college campus, let's talk about a college campus. Because I think a lot of college campuses got this way wrong. And we need to course correct here. And people who, look, would I like to hear from people that I agree with 24/7? Yeah, sure, right? That would be good for, I guess, my mental health. But that's not healthy for democracy. If you have on campus Ben Shapiro, and only Ben Shapiro 7 days a week, you've got a problem, right? You need to have balance in discourse. So what I think, and I don't know the policy about now, I have no idea, so hopefully I'm not stepping on anything. What I think all universities and colleges should do is be completely viewpoint neutral. There shouldn't be a Democratic college or Republican university. They shouldn't take positions on the issues of the day. They should take two main positions, which is one, we're going to get every student to commit to civic discourse at every single term, everywhere, at any place. And two, if a group wants to bring a student, regardless of viewpoint, a speaker, regardless of viewpoint, they can. Those, I think, should be the three guiding principles that will allow for discussions like this to take place at universities and colleges all across our country.
Look, this is an area where I would agree with the representative in terms of, yeah, at some point today he'll do that for me. I don't know, we'll see. But no, I will say that those are very good viewpoints and initiatives that college campuses can incorporate. I would say we also do need to help to protect students from organizations that are trying to intentionally indoctrinate for a particular purpose. And I saw this down at UPenn with the anti-Semitic acts happening and the groups that were kind of overtaking the college campus, and they were harassing students and just not acting appropriately. So it's one thing to have free speech, obviously, but it's another to use it to, again, indoctrinate people to harm others. And I think that college campuses do have an obligation to keep their students safe. You know, when there's individuals who are walking around that have, you know, Hamas attire on and are part of Antifa, which has now been declared a terrorist organization, walking around on campuses trying to recruit young minds, I think that is a problem. And I think that in terms of free speech, absolutely, we have to continue to protect it, and college campuses are rightly the place to do that, to make sure that each and every one of you can say what you want to say and do it in a safe environment.
Well, thank you both so much for those sentiments. I think that's a perfect opportunity for us to pivot now to our audience Q&A with this idea of civil discourse in mind. So with that, I believe Gavin Menick here at the Open Discourse Coalition.
Yeah, I'm
would
right
give us-
over here. I got the first question.
Yes, thank you.
So like I said, I'm Gavin. My first question pertains to the economic policies recently adopted by the federal government. So over the last year, the Trump administration has purchased equity shares in various firms like Intel and Trilogy Metals. What are your opinions on this increase in government involvement in the private sector? And would you guys support that at like the state level?
I think I barely heard it, but you're talking about the federal government purchasing basically portions of critical minerals, basically, from companies or parts of companies that own critical minerals.
Yeah,
Yeah. So normally, I would say government's not supposed to be in the private sector, and certainly not purchasing these types of things, types of companies or percentages of them. I do think that right now, our country is faced with a very difficult challenge, which is to compete with China in the AI race. And inevitably, and in the past, the government has, I don't want to say commandeered, but basically, they've commandeered gold in the past as needed. And so I think in this case, they're trying to make an investment in America's future to ensure that we have the right, again, minerals in order to facilitate our role and responsibility to keep the American people safe when it comes to competing against China. It is a serious thing, and it involves the energy sector. These data centers are a big deal, and they're coming to Pennsylvania. They are drawing a lot of energy, and if you're investing in the technology that's needed in order to compete, then you're investing in these types of companies. So, I think in terms of a national security perspective, it's important that we engage in that.
This is sort of along the same strain of a corrupt administration. Trump's bottom line, his net worth has never been higher as Americans' net worth continues to decline. But he's sitting pretty, as well as his family. And you just brought up one example of this, but we all know how tech companies have come to the administration on bended knee, pleading to be taken in to his orbit. The documentary deal that Melania Trump got, his cryptocurrency, Trump's investment in Bitcoin. How about the $400 million plane that he took from Qatar? By the way, in Pennsylvania, that would be perfectly legal. In Pennsylvania, there is no restriction on gifts. So Martina and I could take that Qatari plane. It hasn't been offered, but we could take it as long as we disclosed it on our disclosure form. It's just $400 million between friends, right? Nothing asked, nothing bargained, all above board. We need reform of this corrupt administration. And that reform needs to take place here in Pennsylvania. Democrats and Republicans should be rallying for it at the national level, because we have the perfect strawman of an administration that continues to only enrich itself.
All right, thank you for the question. Anyone else have any questions?
I got one over here. Hi, representatives. Thank you guys for coming, and I think this is a great event. I completely agree with the sentiment about us all being immigrants, but Representative Solomon, I would highlight that you missed one key word. We all came here legally. So my question to you is, if I were to break into your house and steal your food and sleep on your couch, and when I got sick you took me to the doctors and paid for it out of your own pocket, would you ever call the police to say that I was trespassing or breaking? I mean, as an attorney, I certainly would think you know about the laws of trespassing and breaking and entering.
What's your name?
Phil.
Phil. Yeah, I mean, that's a convenient pivot away from my remarks about a nation of immigrants. Remember what I started with, and this is, I think, Phil, your example, right, is that even when there is agreement, we can't even embrace the agreement. I said that the Biden administration failed on the border, but that the Trump administration has played this in a ham-handed, illegal way. If you are a felon and you're illegally here, you should be removed from this country. This administration has gone far from that charge. No administration has devoted as much to ICE, who are going down our streets, removing citizens who are legally here. That is the big difference. And I give the Trump administration credit. They know that if these citizens are removed to other countries, that we don't have the long arm of our government, and the courts can't even bring them back home. That is not American. Folks who are illegal, who commit felonies, that's one thing. We have also taken away critical resources, almost stripped our budget to deal with policing in our communities. Block grants that served our neighborhoods to make our communities safer. Why? Because this administration wanted to give it all to ICE. In a fever pitch to round up as many people off of our streets. It's downright un-American.
What's un-American is using American taxpayer funds to pay for illegal immigrants everything. It's unfair. As a matter of fact, it's so unfair that our economy, 123% of America's GDP is actually how much we're in debt. Okay? That's about $350,000 in debt per tax-paying citizen in America. You can't spend what you don't have. And so when you see the reforms coming down the pipeline in terms of the administration cutting back that spending on illegal immigrants, that's a big deal. That means a lot to taxpayers who've been footing the bill for an awful long time. For people who were never supposed to be here to begin with, who snuck in and took what wasn't theirs. That's un-American.
$3 trillion. So the out-of-control spending is at the feet of this Congress and at the president. The big beautiful bill, Martina, that you mentioned earlier, costs $3 trillion on paper, and if you get rid of the gimmicks, which call for to expire the tax credits, which we did before in 2016, which were simply gimmicks to hide the actual cost of the legislation. The legislation costs $5 trillion. When did the Republican Party simply want to spend at all costs? $5 trillion. Talk about adding to the debt. And it is a just clear wealth transfer. I mean, I give the Republicans credit. There's no shame about it. $1 trillion in spending cuts to Medicaid and food stamps go to 1.2 go to spend $1.1 trillion to tax cuts for people that earn $500,000 or above. It is a direct wealth transfer to the wealthiest and slashing money for people in our neighborhoods. In addition, these aren't in Democratic districts. The vast majority of folks who are going to be hurt by the cuts to food stamps and Medicaid are in Republican rural communities.
Sorry, I
You
think
wanna
we
move on?
would like to get a few more
Okay,
students
3
to
more
have a
questions,
chance
right?
to speak. Yeah.
My question is on healthcare. Under the Trump administration, we talked about the Big Beautiful Bill, and this government shutdown is centered around subsidies for healthcare industries. How do you feel the Trump administration, Republicans as a whole, have handled the ballooning healthcare costs of Americans?
I think there's been a continuous advocacy for transparency in costs. That will help to control and mitigate some of the ballooning that's been taking place, well, a lot of it, if anything. I think that what we've seen here in Pennsylvania with this budget shutdown, it's not just the federal government, it's state government too. And there's a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse. There's a lot of the GPL1 costs for individuals who are accessing, a benefit that maybe probably shouldn't be approved like the way that it was. It's very, very costly, those types of, medications, and it's should be probably narrowed, and I think even the Shapiro administration has stated as such. So, we have a lot of opportunity to address the waste, fraud, and abuse, especially using new technologies that become available, and to make sure that people still have access to the healthcare that they need, but also that it's not literally costing a small fortune in order to provide it as taxpayers.
Sorry, I think we're going to limit to one speaker per answer
Okay.
just to facilitate more discussion. Sure, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both for coming and presenting your perspectives. I was many years ago, graduated in 1973 as a conservative from the University of California at Berkeley. So, give you an idea of what perspective I'm coming from. But I've noticed, though, that in spite of those 50 years or plus or minus, that on the university campuses, the studies still show that 90% of the professors are Democrats. And this is certainly an imbalance of an education that needs to be remedied if we're talking about freedom of speech. Even tonight, I would think some professors here should have made it mandatory that students come and hear this presentation. I don't see a huge amount of students, too many gray hairs like me. But in any case, I wonder if you've ever thought of that imbalance. And I see what President Trump has done is the first time has moved the meter from that extremely liberal indoctrination program to a more conservative approach. And the way he did it was using the money. And the same way I think the other financial deals that he's done is moving people from where they traditionally would find themselves. But how do we address that? And do you agree that the universities needed to be shifted more to the middle?
Yeah, I don't really think that politics should get into the way that we educate students. That's why I kind of put out 3 sort of guideposts if I were to design college curriculum. And let me underline that a bit. So I went to Swarthmore, which I I mean, there was a Republican club, but I think there were probably like 3 students in it, right? You were not there, but you would have been welcome. There is, I think, an effort that I see at a lot of more liberal institutions for liberals to teach conservative thought in sort of this kind of mythical creature way. Oh, Republicans, wow, you can see them. They laugh and they cry and they love. Wow, this is amazing. It's very strange. Having viewpoint diversity is really critical. But that doesn't mean you're taking a political position as a university. An individual professor, sure. Sure, if an individual professor has an opinion about the Trump administration, likes, dislikes, great. And I think populating the classrooms with that diverse viewpoint is only going to enrich the academic experience.
Thank you. So with that, I have one final question for the two of you for some final thoughts that our audience can take home tonight. So, do you have any passing comments to our audience on what we can take away for the future of bipartisanship and its preservation, considering the climate today for our country? So, Representative White, if you could.
So, believe it or not, Jared and I get along very well. And I will just say that I think that the public should have hope in the fact that there are legislators like us out here who are willing to come forward, express our opinions, right or wrong, share with you information, again, right or wrong, preferably right. Right. You'll get it one time, Jared, you'll get it eventually. But no, I would urge you to just know that there are a lot of elected officials who are in the middle of the road, who have common sense, who want to really work together to get and accomplish really great things for you and your families and our communities. We want you to be safe, to have a great education, to have a wonderful life here. And in Pennsylvania, I know that that's possible because, again, I get to work with Jared and really great people across the aisle that we do make a difference. And you know, in Pennsylvania, it seems like it can be really difficult these days because it's a 1-seat minority and everybody's at this tug of war and it's split government. As you know, our governor reminds us every day, it's split government, and it's just so difficult to get anything done. And it is very challenging, but that doesn't mean that there aren't legislators who are rising to the challenge to accomplish, again, great things for you. Thank you.
I agree. Martina has been a great partner on so many issues, quality of life issues in Northeast Philadelphia. We had a pivotal piece of legislation to look after, be good stewards of the financial health of our city. We worked on the gun violence task force for Philadelphia to make our neighborhoods safer. And that was all done because we're friends. I'm not saying we didn't agree on policy, we did, but it began through a friendship that, yes, is tested on policy, but the relationship stands against and pushes against those policy disagreements to get to a place where we're helping all Pennsylvanians. I've told this story before, but my first day in the Pennsylvania House, I was on the floor of the House and they were giving us a tour. And the tour guide said, on your left is the Democratic printer and on your right is the Republican printer. And I said, what if I printed to the Republican printer? She said, no. Can't possibly do that. That just gives you a sense of the wiring, the DNA of our politics is to try and divide us, to try and get us hunkered down in our political camps. I don't really think that all of you hate politics. I think you hate politics because it's not working. And the real magic happens when politics and policy come together in unique moments to do really transformational things. And that's what we need to get back to doing in our Commonwealth and country.
Thank you. I know this point of convergence is much appreciated. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time tonight and our audience participation. So I'd like to invite all our guests and thanking Representative White and Representative Solomon for coming out here to Bucknell. So with that. Just as a reminder for our audience, if you would like to stay up to date with what our guests are doing in Harrisburg and in Philadelphia, I encourage everyone interested to follow them on social media. And thank you to our sponsors, the Open Discourse Coalition, the Bucknell Program for American Leadership, and please look out for emails on upcoming programs, including